So let's get to day two of this Karen Read retrial now. We've seen emotional testimony from two key witnesses, Carrie Roberts, John O'Keefe's longtime friend, and also O'Keefe's mom, Peggy O'Keefe. They both took the stand today. Now, Read's on trial for a second time in connection to the death of her then-boyfriend, John O'Keefe, a Boston police officer who died in January of 2022. The prosecutors have alleged all along that she hit him with her SUV and she left him to die in the snow in front of a friend's house. Let's bring our legal expert in on this, the criminal defense attorney, Brian Claypool. Good to see you, Brian. I know just for whatever reason, I think it's because I watched the documentary more than other trials, just seem to be following this one, and just so much there. You wouldn't think, you know, in terms of police work that didn't seem to go right. And first you think it's open and shut, and they say, well, wow, why did they do this wrong? Why did they do that wrong? But what I would like to get your point, at least at first, and then maybe we'll play a clip from the testimony, is when you go into a second trial like this, who has the advantage? I saw someone earlier saying, well, it might be the prosecution because they're less likely to be surprised by some strategy from the defense. But how do you see it?
Hey, Connell, great to see you again. Yeah, I see it a little bit differently. I think that the defense has a little bit of an advantage in a retrial. Why? Because in the first trial, Connell, you have evidence locked in, or testimony that's locked in under oath, and then you can order what's called the trial transcript. And you have this booklet of all the testimony that was given in the first trial, and you use that testimony as a defense lawyer to impeach witnesses brought on by the prosecution. Say, hey, you testified as to this in the first trial. You've now changed that testimony, right?
Right.
So I think that gives an advantage to the defense.
That's interesting because I saw today they were using, like I mentioned, there's a documentary about it, and then she did other interviews. She does interviews outside the courthouse just about every day, and they were playing some of those clips, which is interesting, that were said in between the trials. One the judge didn't even allow in. But let me talk about these witnesses I mentioned. I'll start with Carrie Roberts. So there's been this idea, like, so she's accused Karen Read of running over her boyfriend and then leaving the scene and leaving him to die. And there's been this thing that she said the next morning when his body was found, you know, I hit him, that kind of thing. So Carrie Roberts recounted the moments after the incident because she was there with Karen Read when the body was discovered. Watch.
When the EMTs were around and they were working on the body, she was running around and saying, did I hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead?
So one of the weird things about that is they didn't include it, I don't think, in the initial reports, like the police report. That wasn't in it. But since then, there's been a lot of testimony to it. What do you make of that, and whether it's a confession or something else?
Yeah, hey, Connor, well, with respect to her testimony, even if there's ambiguity, I think you're going to hear from a paramedic in this case, who testified in the first trial, and the paramedic said that he did overhear Read say, hey, look, I hit him. So I think it neutralizes that. But the interesting part of this trial, Connell, that I see is in most murder cases, you know the cause of death going into the trial. In other words, somebody shot, you know a gun caused the death.
Yep.
Somebody strangled. We know somebody then choked the victim. Here, it is a conundrum. It's the prosecution saying, hey, Read hit him backing up recklessly. Read is saying, I didn't do that. It's the guys inside the house.
And then the arm. See the arm right there? Like with the, some people, yeah, there was this back and forth. Was it a dog that bit him? Or was that a car that ran him over? You know.
That's right. Yeah, that caused a problem. Then you heard an opening statement. Defense lawyer says, hey, wait a minute. They rehomed the dog. They sent the dog somewhere else. They sold the house quickly after. Allegedly, a couple of the guys inside the house, they lost their phones or they allegedly destroyed evidence. So that creates some doubt in the juror's mind as well as to, wait a minute, did something happen inside that house?
Yeah, and all you need is a little doubt. Let me play a quick clip from the mom, Peggy. She was this John's mother who testified today as well about, I guess, interacting with Karen after they knew that John had died. Here's his mom.
So we started walking down the corridor, and as I'm walking down, I hear Karen Read yell, Peg, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Peg, is he dead?
So she was emotional. That's just one clip, Ryan, from many others that was played today, understandably so, of course. But again, from a defense attorney's perspective, and you are one, do you look at this case as one that's relatively easy to raise some doubt, at least in some jurors' minds, or the opposite? How do you actually see it big picture?
Yeah, great question, Connell. I think you've got to break it down with the charges. The second-degree murder charges, if I'm a defense lawyer, there's going to be an acquittal on that. And in fact, there was on the first trial, but it was never announced to the jury, and that's up on a Supreme Court issue. But I think the reason why for that, Connell, is you got to prove it wasn't premeditated, but she intended to either kill him or inflict grievous, bodily harm. I don't think you ever get to that point here because she's like, I'm not sure I even hit him.
I don't know if she knows to this day what happened. She was so drunk the night before and all that, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I think where there's a problem for the defense on the case is potentially with the vehicular manslaughter. Okay. And why do I say that? Because you're going to have evidence in this case that Reed accelerated about 35 feet in the driveway, and then she backs up going 24 miles an hour. So I think a jury hears that, and I think they're saying, hey, wait a minute. She was drinking, allegedly ate drink that night, and she did that. And then there's this alleged, a Google search on how long somebody can survive in the snow. Right. But I think it's the problem charge, I think, for the defense in this case.
There's the tail light and how it broke and all the rest was in question.
That's another great point, Connell, the evidence of the tail light.
Yeah, we'll get back into it.
Yeah, she went to the scene and then she picked up a piece of her tail light. That's a massive piece of evidence that the SUV could have likely impacted O'Keefe. Right.
Well, as I said, we'll get back into it. We have time as they continue with this, but it's a crazy case in many ways, more than you would think. Brian, thanks as always. Brian Claypool with us. Now, I want to move on because we're